By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Welcome to another episode of Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school magic. And today we are still showing you games from the Frost Giant Cup in Hilversum. And we've just had the first 5 rounds of the Swiss. If you haven't seen them yet, there's a link popping up right now and it'll take you to the playlist. And I can really advise you to have a look. They're pretty cool games in those first 5 rounds. But now we've reached the top 8 of this exciting old school magic tournament, and we're about to look at Martin, who's sitting on the left, and he's playing with a 4-color spice deck. He's basically playing with the best of green, blue, red, and black. So the only color he's not playing with is white. Now, I do know he's a big fan of the Diamond Valley, so I'm expecting to see some Diamond Valleys here in Martin's deck. I don't have a deck list or a deck photo, so I cannot show that to you, unfortunately. He is playing against a blue-white control player, and I don't have a list or a photo either. I do know that he's playing with your regular white cards, Disenchant Swords. He's also playing with some Angels. He's playing with Surrender Befried, so that means that he can, he can get some 3-4 flyers quickly on the board. That's probably what he's going to try to do. He's also playing with some counter spells, and I believe he's playing with a Meekstone or two, so that could be interesting in combination with the Sarah Angel. So let's quickly go to the matchup and just see what's going to happen. Game number 1 of the quarterfinals here at the Frost Giant Cup. And the player on the left is playing with the 4-color good stuff. So that's Martin. And the player on the right is playing with the white blue control deck. And look at that start here with the Mox into a Felwar. And there's a Library of Alexandria. So that's going to be interesting as well. And there's a Mox Jet. And it looks like he wants to play another spell. Also playing a Black Lotus here. I do believe that means that he's going down to 6 cards. Probably playing the Black Lotus to counter. That's usually what you see with these type of decks. Nice to see the altered Mox, by the way. Looks pretty cool. And there's an Ancestral Recall, so maybe we can see that counter spell that we just talked about. That would mean that he's going back to 5 cards though, kind of making the Library of Alexandria useless. At least for the next couple of turns to come. And he's cracking the Black Lotus, playing a counter spell, so the Ancestral Recall is countered. And look at this, there is a Mind Twist. And this is interesting because he's actually playing it for 3, but I do believe that Felwar cannot produce any mana because the Library of Alexandria only produces colorless mana. So that's a little bit of a hiccup in the game here. And we'll see if it has any consequences further down the line. Please let me know if I'm wrong, by the way, because I am wrong from time to time. There's an attack with the Mistress Factory, so his opponent is going to 18, going to 16, and playing a Tundra now. And as we can see, he has 4 cards in hand, so it's going to be difficult for him to activate that Library of Alexandria. There's another attack. And there's a Disenchant in response. And there's a counter spell. Okay, interesting. So we've seen a lot of counter spells going. And there's another attack, going to 12 now. And there's a Sylvan Light. Oh, there's again a counter spell. It's kind of a counter war so far this first game. And there is a Sarah Angel, and now he is tapped out. So if Martin has a solution for this Sarah, the opponent won't be able to counter it. And there's a block, and exactly there's the Lightning Bolt. Pretty good deal here for the white-blue player because it's a 2-for-1. And of course, Martin hasn't taken any damage, so it's kind of easy for him to... Oh no, he doesn't have the Sylvan anymore. I wanted to say easy to take an extra card, but the Sylvan Library got countered, of course. Because that would have been unique. That would have definitely given him the advantage in this game. In this case, he's just passing turn. And there's a tap. Probably a Surrender Befried here. And there it is, the 3-4. Looks like an if-biff Ifrit, but remember the revised version was a misprint, so it had the if-biff And it's also a green card, but it's actually a blue card. So that's the revised version. And there's a shatter. Interesting choice here. Maybe a balance coming up. No, he doesn't play with white, so not a balance. But a shatter on the Mox Jet. And Wheel of Fortune, of course, that's the other option. But there's a counter spell here on the Wheel of Fortune. Ay, 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 ay. And that's not great here. Well, it's not great for the for Martin on the left, but it's not too bad for the control player, the blue-white control player, obviously. Dealing some damage finally, so I believe Martin is now going to 14. And there's the Diamond Valley that we talked about in the introduction. And there's a control magic. And is there another counterspell? Now remember, he is playing with white as well, so he does have disenchants in his deck. And there is a power sink for 3. That does mean that he's going to 7. Because of that City of Brass. Next turn 6, because he's taking damage each turn from his own Surrender Befreed. So that's not ideal. And Martin at this point on 11 life. And I believe if Martin can find a creature, he's kind of safe. If he can cast it successfully though. And there's another attack. Meaning he's going to 8. And the other player's on 5. So this is kind of exciting here. Both players pretty close. There's an attack now, and that means that Martin is also on 5. And is there a creature coming? And there's a Suchi. And remember, because of the Diamond Valley, he can sacrifice the Suchi, gaining 4 more life. And it basically means that he needs 2 more turns. But there's a Side Blast in response. Wow! That means he's going to 2, going to 1. He's going to try to kill him now, but I believe he's going to sack it. So that does mean that he's still alive. And there's a Swords. Oh, I like this. I mean, it's really going up and down in this game. I really like it. And there's another Side Blast for the win. And that's it. Really nice way of winning this first game. My compliments to the player on the right. Very nice moves, my man. So the first game is going to the blue-white control player. Now they're going to check their sideboards, and we'll catch back to them in game number 2. Game number 2, and it is the 4-color goodness deck on the play here after that win from the blue-white deck, the player on the right. And there's a Library of Alexandria again. It wasn't as dominant. Oh, there's what did you guys do? So here we go. We have a library game. Interesting to see to whose advantage this is. That usually does mean that the start of the games are going a little bit slower. And we see a Mox Jet and a Mox Sapphire now. And there's his first activation as well. And with his, I'm meaning the 4-color deck player playing a Volcanic Island. And also a Mox. And basically both players can now start playing out extra cards. And what's going to be interesting is when they are kind of forced to use their counter spells and removal, and then their hand size will go down. And they won't be able to draw cards as easily. And then the question is, like, what price are you willing to pay? And we do see that Surrender Befreed now. And there's a Black Lotus, there's a Sack of the Black Lotus, and there's a Control Magic. And at least for now, it is Martin's creature. And I'm saying for now because, of course, when you're playing against white, you know you're probably going to face 4 disenchant. Let's see if that's going to happen, if he already has a disenchant, or if he's just going to summon another creature or simply pass turn. I do believe he has 8 cards in hand right now. Because remember, there he's drawing an extra card from that library. Tapping the Mox Jet, untapping the Jet, and here playing a Swords on his own creature. And then passing turn again. So that means that Martin is going to 23, I believe. And also drawing another card. So 9 cards in hand here, and what a luxury for both players. And shouldn't he discard, or am I missing something? I am probably missing something. He probably went to 7, then drew card number 8, played a land, so he's on 7. So I'm sorry, my mistake. Trying to follow hand size here as well, because it could be interesting. And there's that Meekstone that I talked about earlier. I think the Art of Meekstone is great. I think the card is great. It's not always useful, you know, obviously in a format where you see a lot of Serra Angels. But for instance, against an Urnum Jin, those cards are great. Against a Jusum Jin, they're great. They're nice with an Icy Manipulator next to it. And there's a City of Brass being played. Passing turn here, so not activating the Loa yet. Probably going to do that on the end step of the opponent. And there's a Disenchant on the Sapphire, counting his cards. Does he now have 7 in hand? Probably. It's going a little bit too fast for me to judge. Playing a City of Brass. And tapping 3 here. Interesting. Playing an Ice Storm here. And then playing a Red Elemental Blast on that counterspell. So that means that the Library of Alexandria is a goner. And there's an Ancestral Recall. And now because he's tapped out, except for the Loa that is, he cannot counter that Ancestral Recall. So he's actually drawing 3 cards. And he's already used that Red Elemental Blast. Obviously, Red Elemental Blast is a very good card against the type of deck that Martin is playing. So I assume he just boarded in 4 of them. So we're going to see more of those in this game probably, and maybe in game number 3 if we're going to have a game number 3. In the meanwhile, the control player here is playing out his Demonic Tutor, and I think that's one of the 2 cards he's probably splashed from black, because that's kind of the usual thing that players do. They splashing in the Mind Twist and the Demonic Tutor. And look at this, here is a Serra Angel, so things are looking good for the control player. Remember, he's already had 1 game, so if he can win this, he's going through to the semifinals of the Frost Giant Cup. Or can the 4-color player do something back? He double bolt here. And of course, you know, you can do these expensive 2-for-1s when you have an active Library of Alexandria on the board, because you can draw back those cards, and that's what making the library so incredibly powerful. You can just go through your spells, it doesn't matter. As long as you keep those 7 in hand, you're always a card up. And there's a Mishra's Factory, so that can represent some damage. We know that the 4-color player is playing with Shatters. And the control player seems to be in the tank at the moment, really looking at his cards. It looks like he's just passing turn. And it's nice. Now we can kind of see his hand size and 6 cards in hand. And there's a Strip Mine. This could be interesting because if you can strip one of his blue sources, although he has so many blue sources, and there's a Regrowth here, will there be a counter spell? And that's always interesting. Like, are you going to choose to counter the Regrowth, or are you going to wait until your opponent chooses to take something back with the Regrowth and counter that? I think this is the better move, just countering the Regrowth. Why not? If you have the mana and you have the opportunity. And what will he take back? So he's tapping 2, so he's choosing 1. A Dust to Dust, interesting. Usually a very strong card, but maybe the 4-color player anticipated on it and is not playing a lot of artifacts out. And let's see what he's getting back. Will he take back his library? He's actually taking back a counter spell. And that kind of shows the immense value that the counterspell has for this player. You know, there's so much good stuff in his library, but he's choosing a counterspell. And passing turn. And that, of course, is one of the really good things about a Mishra's Factory, is that you cannot counter it. That makes it so difficult. And I'm looking at that Strip Mine, and I'm thinking, you know, if you can strip the factory, at least you can deal some damage. But maybe that's pretty short term. And there's that Diamond Valley again. Couldn't save him in game number 1. And it looks like this is going to be a pretty long game. especially knowing that you're playing against somebody with an active library and the active library player knows that his opponent has a counterspell in hand. So that kind of makes the game a little stale. That makes that the game goes a little bit slower, I think. There's a lightning bolt. With I shouldn't have said still, I just meant slower, because it is a very interesting battle here. It's almost like chess, where the players kind of know each other's pieces and are kind of thinking what's the best approach to this. And there is something coming, and there's an Urnam Jin. Interesting, there's that counterspell, because he does have a Meekstone. And will there be a red Elemental Blast? There's that little tap. First he's drawing an extra card, he can still respond. I thought I saw him, yeah, he's now tapping his Volcanic Island, tapping a City of Brass, and he is playing the counterspell. And I wonder what his plan is then, but look at that. There's another blue mana, and there's a Swords to Plowshare, so that's actually a white mana. Using a Tundra to produce white mana, and simply using a Swords. And attacking now, and there's that Strip Mine. And will there be, and there's a Lightning Bolt. I wanted to say will there be a Shatter, but there's a Lightning Bolt. And that means that the road is now cleared, and the 4-color player can now attack with his Mishra. There's the other draw with the Library of Alexandria. And it's a pretty exciting game so far. It's really going up and down, and both players have a lot of these instant cards like Counterspell, Swords, Red Elemental Blasts, and here you go, another one, Divine Offering. I'm always a big fan of instants because of this. And okay, it's kind of hard to see what he's playing there. That's an Ancestral Recall, I think, but there's a Counterspell here. And there... This is so nice. I'm sorry, I'm really liking all these instant fights, you know. I'm really enjoying instants. Hercule's Recall, by the way, was that, and then you need to take back all the artifacts to your hand. If you or your opponent, in this case, he chose himself to save his factory. And look at that, there's a Brain Geyser. And I'm curious if the opponent is going to be able to counter it. Now remember, he probably wants to keep some cards in his hand because of the Library of Alexandria. And I must say the blue-white player is really putting on a fight, because you're playing against somebody that has had an active library for the entire game. And look at that, so he can get some cards again. And there is a big... Oh, and there's a Mind Twist, that's brutal. Oh, and I think this is a decider here. This is a decider. Oh, this is just brutal. Loses his entire hand to that Mind Twist, and he was tapped out because of the Brain Geyser, couldn't counter, and had to pay the ultimate price for that. So only one card in hand now, and his opponent with an active Aloha, and he's on 8. And this is going to be really, really difficult. He needs at least a Mind Twist of his own. Maybe a balance. A balance could actually make everything right again. If he has a balance. And there's a balance. Is there a counterspell? Oh, mana drain. Oh, and there's the bump. So that's nice. That's a nice fist bump. But, oh, man. Oh, if this balance would have succeeded, it would have been such a cool play. But there was the mana drain. And this is turning into a very cool game number 2. I'm really enjoying this so far. I mean, both players really showing a high level of magic here. And there's a Psyblast to finish it off. So it was a Psyblast this time from the 4-color player to finish it off. And last time it was the control player that played the Psyblast. Wow, thank you for this very exciting game number 2. And I'm really happy because that means it's 1-1. And we're going to get a decisive game number 3. Game number 3, and what a game number 2 that was. Hopefully game number 3. If game number 3 is half as good as game number 2, I'm happy. Great magic there. And there is a Tundra here. Of course, the blue-white control player on the play, so I guess he's got a little advantage because of that. Both decks very close. Playing with a lot of instant spells, making this a very interesting confrontation. And there is a Mox Sapphire here and a Tundra turn 1. That means he can counter from the get-go. And the 4-color player just playing a single Volcanic Island. Beautiful black bordered one. I believe it's a beta. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And there's a tap. Nice! And there's a Chaos Orb. So we're kind of slow-mo, obviously, as you can see. And this is the first flip. So now this matchup also has an orb flip, making it even better. And bam! And that's a nice hit. That's a very good flip. And that means that it's not looking good for the 4-color player here. For Martin on the left. He's in trouble. And there's... Ooh, interesting is a Vanilla. We haven't seen that one. I wonder if it comes from the sideboard. A quick lightning bolt in response. Of course, taking 1 damage from the City of Brass and also playing a Mishra's Factory here. So he doesn't have or doesn't want to play out his second blue mana. And there's a recall. So he's going to look for something, probably the Chaos Orb. And ready to flip again. And will he flip on another land? That's of course the big question. And is he going to play it out now? Playing an island. What is he going to do? Looks like he's pretty much in the tank at the moment. Tapping 2 mana will... Oh, interesting. There's a balance. I wanted to say, well, is that the Chaos Orb? But it's actually a balance. And there's a mana drain on the balance. And taking a damage here and now casting that Chaos Orb, knowing that his opponent can no longer counter. Interesting lines of play here. And you can see that both players are very experienced, kind of knowing what to expect from one another. Reading each other's ideas, thoughts, and with that mana drain he's able to cast the MtG, and I wonder if he's going to use the... Yes, that's what he's going to do. He's going to use the Chaos Orb on the MtG, and he has to flip. As you can see, it's in slow-mo, and bam, it's a miss. Wow. And again, that's going to mean that he at least has to take some damage, or does he have a Swords? I mean, he is playing with white, and white gives you a lot of options. Blue gives you the counter power, and white gives you disenchant and swords. So I think it's one of the strongest color combinations in old school. But for now, he's stuck on 13 after missing that flip. And there is a time walk to make matters worse. And there doesn't seem to be a counter spell here. Another attack. That means he's on 9. And there's another MtG. Another Ernie on the board. And this is problematic. He's on 9. That means that next... Yes, it's over. Oh my god. Okay, so that means that, you know, missing that flip kind of was decisive here, because that cost him 8 life. And of course, his Side Blast is a great card, but not great against an MtG, because an MtG has a toughness of 5. Thank you for this great matchup. And that means that Martin and his 4-color deck will advance to the semifinals. And I can already tell you that his deck will also be the one that you're going to see in action for the semifinals. So if you want to see that, keep an eye on the channel, because I will be updating twice a week with the games from the Frost Giant Cup. If you'd like to see more old school Magic, you can check out the videos that are appearing right now on the screen, or you can of course visit the channel. We have more than 100 old school Magic videos and games for you on the channel. If you want to support us, if you want to support me, you can do so by subscribing to this channel, leaving a like, leaving a comment, and of course spread the videos and spread the word. And thank you for doing that, by the way, because the channel is gradually growing thanks to your help. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, so that's pretty cool. For now, thank you for watching Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school Magic, and see you next time.
Igitus figitus sumba kazee.